Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, I'm here to tell you about the best JRPG you've never played. No, this isn't a heat of the moment take. Kuro no Kiseki, aka Trails Through Daybreak. I played this one all the way back in January. I played the Japanese release with an English patch, and it still is, to this day, my game of the year for 2024. So I've had half a year to really sit on this take and let it marinate. It still holds true. Now, shout out to NISA who provided the English copy for me to check out on my PS5. I went in there, brushed up some Kuro skills, checked out what was going on, and what's quickly becoming a June tradition. Last year, we reviewed Trails into Reverie, a top 5 game of the year for me last year, and a wonderful cap to a long story in the Trails series. But now it's continuing as we explore Calvert here in Trails Through Daybreak. But before we get into Daybreak, a quick word from today's sponsor. The following video is sponsored by Marvel's Strike Force. If you're a massive comic book fan like me, then you will absolutely love what Marvel's Strike Force is doing, allowing you to build an ultimate team of heroes and villains, combining them together, and then taking on endless crews of enemies. And it allows you to tackle some dream scenarios, like what happens if the Human Torch takes on the Sinister Six. Like, these cool ideas just come to life here in this game. Also, be on the lookout for characters constantly releasing, like the Alpha Flight team, which is featuring Canadian superheroes Northstar, Guardian, and Sasquatch. Now, for me, as a big X-Men fan, and with Deadpool 3 coming up, I'm in the Logan mood. And guess what? This month, you can unlock his character for free in Marvel Strike Force, the sponsor of this video. And it doesn't stop at Logan. You can also celebrate Pride Month with LGBTQ heroes like Korg and America Chavez. So assemble your squad against threats like Doctor Doom and Apocalypse, and as you play the game, you're going to level up and grow and evolve your squad through epic combat and a groundbreaking RPG system. And there's going to be new modes to battle your way through, from Alliance War to Alliance Battles, Raids, and Cosmic Crucibles. So much going on here, and all of it looks fantastic with a great storyline to boot. So, what are you waiting for? For a limited time, you can get your hands on Wolverine for free using this month's limited time promo code Logan. Go ahead, install Marvel Strike Force, and immerse yourself in the Marvel Universe. And one of the biggest questions people ask, and I'll answer every single time we do a Trails review, is where's the best place to start, Maddie? And this is an interesting time because there have been rumors about a Sky remake or remaster. So I don't know what's going to happen. We did make a whole Sky trilogy recap. If you want to go ahead and check that out, it's a little retrospective, just breaking down why those games are so special. If they become more readily available, Sky is the best place to start. I'm forgiving of people starting with Zero. Some start with Cold Steel. The reality is this is a series that has a long continuous story, and no matter where you start, so long as it's not in the middle of a particular arc, like starting on Cold Steel 2 or starting on Azure, I think you're fine starting at the beginning of any arc, and inevitably you're going to want to go back and get the full story. Trails Through Daybreak definitely sets the tone in a way where the West is going to start hearing about Trails more and more, because you're going to look at this gameplay and go, how have I not heard of this series before? Why is that? Because Falcom has always led by example, and many developers have borrowed ideas from them, but now you're really going to start to see it in a major way. It's combat. So a lot of people, and I'm not trying to take away from games, I'm a huge Atlas fan, as many of you know, are really hyped for Metaphor ReFantazio. Why is that? You can run around the overworld, and there's action combat mixed with turn-based combat. Guess who did it first? Trails Through Daybreak. So in this game, as you're running around these various dungeons, you'll engage in an action combat system. Now, I don't want to oversell it. Think of it like a hack and slash. You're not going to get abilities and crazy things you can do. It's as simple as an attack button, a roll button, a strong attack button, and then when you stun an enemy, you can deploy your shard, which will allow you to enter turn-based combat. Now, the really cool thing about Daybreak's combat system is that just like Chrono Trigger, for example, the overworld is the battle arena. So battles can be sprung at any time, and you can engage with them how you like. Not only is this an evolution in how turn-based combat can work, mixing in a little bit of action elements to make it more appealing to people who are newcomers to the genre, you really look at turn-based and where it is now, and I think there's a place for all different types of turn-based. Like, I look at Octopath, and I think there's a place for that style of turn-based, right? Like, more classical style turn-based. But there's also the argument that can be made that this is one of the more static stagnant genres, and this is one of the first true evolutions in it I've ever seen. This is interesting in particular for the Trails series because they've historically had some of the best-in-class turn-based combat, where you would run around the overworld, you hit the enemy, you'd get an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on who engaged first, and then you had basically spells and abilities that you could cast throughout this battlefield, and it would function a lot like a similar turn-based game that you've seen before. But now you have freedom of movement in this battlefield. You can really attack enemies from any angle you want, and you're going to want to expose those weaknesses. In Trails Through Daybreak, what you'll have are weaknesses from the back or the side, depending on what skill you're using. Some of them will get bonuses for different angles. And when you combine that with one of the deepest character building systems that I've seen in a JRPG, it's a match made in heaven. It's not just targeting weaknesses and tactical awareness, it really comes down to what you've done out of battle to prepare yourself for the biggest fights in the game. So what you have in Trails Through Daybreak is a simple system in the terms of equipment. You have your accessory slots, armor slots, weapon slots, that sort of thing, and it's just going to change numbers in the background. You're not going to see many drastic transformations in your character's appearance or anything like that. That's always been Trails in that sense. But what you have now is a brand new overhauled ornament system that, even as a series veteran, I can say, yeah, it's a little intimidating, but stick with it and you'll understand it. So I'm going to try my best to explain it. What you have are various slots like you would in prior Trails games. You take basically your spells and your abilities and you slot them as what would effectively be pieces of equipment. Like, oh, you want a fireball available? Okay, equip that as an ornament. Now, the trick here with this new ornament system is as you build out certain archetypes, you're going to see a number starts going up for, say, fire or water, and these will enable certain shard skills. So some of them are really busted, like getting hit by an enemy and immediately clapping back and hitting them. Things like that, all the way to bonus damage, casting a spell twice in a row. There's just so much min-maxing in this game. Like, if you want to get dorky with builds, this game opens up a whole world of that. You can completely go in and build craft, and each character plays a little different. Naturally, they all have their own suite of skills available. Now, the spells will overlap, but you'll have characters like Aaron Way, the absolute Chad himself, who will be full strength build. Like, he is going to hit the hardest out of anyone on your team. Meanwhile, Agnes is actually going to be more of a mage, and so on and so forth. So normally when I talk about Trails, I like to kick it off with the storytelling, the world connectivity, and no doubt we'll get into all of that. But I really had to shout out how Trails Through Daybreak's combat is absolutely phenomenal. Like, some of the best turn-based combat you can get across the entire industry. And absolutely, Falcom continues to be a leader in this category. And if you're not watching them, you should pay close attention, because some of your favorite game developers, yes, many from the Japan side of the development scene, borrow ideas from this company. It's also worth pointing out that the Trails games are developed by a team of under 100 people. And I don't know how Falcom does it, bouncing between Trails and Ys, and these games continue to look better and better. But Trails Through Daybreak is stunning in that the cutscene quality is better. The music is arguably the best it's ever been. The combat is the biggest and best it's ever been. Like, everything's been amped up to 20. In a sense, a lot of my expectations for Trails into Reverie really was met here with Trails Through Daybreak. Now, Reverie absolutely delivered on every level, but it was more on a story front. It still had the Cold Steel style combat. But when you talk about true JRPG evolution, true series evolution, like going to the next level, Trails Through Daybreak is it. And it's funny because outside of some permutations, some differences in, say, for example, going from sprite work to 3D work, overall, the combat in Trails has been relatively the same, but not really a bad thing, because the combat's always been phenomenal. Like, it's the last thing I wanted to change. So I'm really happy to see that when they did change it, it absolutely played out beautifully. So the gameplay continues to deliver for this series, and even if you just care about gameplay, like, Trails could have a garbage story. With this combat system, though, it's pretty much worth the price of admission already. But for those of you who know how much I love Trails, the main thing I always talk about is the storytelling, and just how incredible I think it is. So you may be scratching your head like, Maddie, why'd you take so long to get around to this? But I really wanted to push forward just how amazing I think this combat is. But the storytelling and decisions made with how the narrative can play out, because yes, there are choices in this game, is also fascinating to me, because Falcom as a smaller team, I thought, well, if they're going to punch above their weight in gameplay, story, and dungeon design, may see some regressions. If I had any sort of complaints with Trails Through Daybreak, but honestly, I feel like I'm being greedy by making the complaint, some of the dungeon designs are a little plain. Like, you'll run through a sewer system, you'll run through a cave, like the things you've seen a million times before in JRPGs. But with the new combat system and how things play out in the overworld, I'm more forgiving of it than probably others are. But with the storytelling, how have they ramped things up here? Well, let's start off with where this is set in the timeline. It's the latest game in the series, of course, but now you're in Calvert. So you already had your games in Liberl with Sky, you had your Crossbell games with Azure and Zero, and then you're in Erebonia for most of Cold Steel. So you're seeing all these different pockets of the world, and Calvert's the one you've just heard the most of and was the most politically involved in a lot of ways in some of the earlier Trails entries. So there's been a lot of growing curiosity about this setting, and wow, they knocked it out of the park. Running around Calvert, this city setting, and just seeing not only how beautiful it is, but the music that plays as you explore. Like, for those of you who remember my Reverie review, I complained about the soundtrack in that game, saying, how can you have such an epic JRPG with flat music? And a lot of people agreed with that, some didn't, but I'm just here to let you know, if you're one of those enjoyers of like older Trails soundtracks, like the feeling it gave you in Sky, Azure, Zero, and if you haven't heard these, they're just beautiful scores from top to bottom. That feeling is fully back. Daybreak absolutely delivers hand over fist on soundtrack. It's unbelievable. But it's really about the character interaction. So in Trails games, I'm more of a main story guy. I'll do some of the necessary side stuff from time to time, but really I just like riding the main story in this game. When I'm playing Cold Steel, I don't want to do the extra requests because honestly, Falcom side content has never been the greatest. That's so different in Kuro. I did every single side quest in this game. When I played it on Steam, logged 80 hours into it, got most of the achievements. Why is that? It's because not only are they way better and way more entertaining, but they added a new alignment system. So you'll have chaos, you'll have neutral, you'll have law, and these are choices that you make throughout these stories that allow them to play out a little bit differently, but more importantly, based off of your alignment in certain parts, particularly the very late game, you will see different outcomes. Because Daybreak is extremely mature in its approach, you'll see dead bodies. You're going to see blood. Like the things I've been asking for in Trails, like, hey, stop hiding behind the anime and fan servicey stuff in Cold Steel. Like, let's get gritty. Let's get serious. Let's start killing off characters. Oh, they heard my complaints. They heard my requests because this game absolutely answers the bell on maturity. If you're one of the fans out there who enjoyed Cold Steel as a saga for its characters, but you felt as you got deeper into it, particularly with Cold Steel 3 and 4, it got really fan servicey, waifu focused, anime inspired. I'm here to tell you that all that's pretty much been wiped away here with Daybreak. It's the exact opposite of what you got from Cold Steel, which for me, as someone who does enjoy Cold Steel, but thought it was kind of a series low compared to how much I enjoyed the rest, oh my gosh, do they deliver a whole new level here. But this alignment system is really at the heartbeat of the game, so it made me want to do all of the side quests, get all of the rewards. I'm just going to tell you all this right now. You can listen to me or not, but I'm going to insist that you do listen to me. Many people are going to see this and go, oh, I'll do Law first playthrough. I'm going to be the good guy the whole way through. No. Chaos. Do Chaos. It is some of the best stuff Trails has ever done. It can also be really hilarious, but like Chaos is some of the best stuff that Trails has done. Just please enjoy it. That's all I'm going to say. Like, if you trust your boy, go do a full Chaos run. If you also want to trust your boy an extra step, I think the English VA here in Daybreak is some really good stuff. But personally, as someone who played through the game in Japanese with English subs, I'm going to say the Japanese voice gets the edge. I mean, look, when you got Jotaro as the main character voice, that's a pretty tall mountain to climb. So yeah, surrounding all of that is some incredible stuff. Now, you mix in on top of this whole alignment system the ability to hang out with your teammates during certain parts of the story. You'll get a certain amount of time that you can spend with party members and get to enjoy their own personal little arcs on the side of the main story. Now, this doesn't mean that personal character growth in the main story is sacrificed for these. It's more additive, and it's absolutely worth doing. You get some of the best storytelling and writing out of these moments. You get teases on the future of this series from these moments. There's some seriously deep cuts here, but they're definitely worthwhile. If you wanted to think of something from the series beforehand, consider the bonding events that you would see in the early Cold Steel games. You get that here pretty much. And I think they fit in well because these are usually moments that Falcom would try to stuff into the main story, and I get why, but they'd feel out of place, and so they would bloat the story to make these moments make more sense, and it would overall hurt the pacing of the game's main story, but you don't really have to worry about that now. It just fits in perfectly. So I have to say, again, with this sort of element on top of the choice system, it's just wonderful to indulge in this game's narrative. All right, enough sales pitching to a lot of individuals who are just kind of on the fence. Now we're going to talk a little nitty gritty. I'm not going to get too deep into the thick of things here with storytelling because many of you Trails fans know everything after like prologue is pretty dangerous, which is why most of my gameplay is very early game stuff. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, the story is this. You have Van Arkride, who runs his own little office and pretty much is a mercenary for hire. He goes under the term Spriggan. Now, what is a Spriggan? This is a person who I would quantify as a fixer from Cyberpunk. They come in and do the jobs that maybe the law enforcement, like police, won't be able to do, that people who are trying to get some jobs done wouldn't feel super comfortable asking them of that. And the Bracer Guild, which is, think of them as another kind of mercenary for hire group, they probably wouldn't be comfortable asking them either. So you have Van here, who's pretty much willing to get his hands dirty. Already off the bat, Van is completely different from other main characters you've experienced in Trails. He's a trash talker, curses all the time. Like, if you're looking at Reen Schwarzer, like the ultimate harem, like this is the furthest thing from him. This is a guy who's willing to kill, he's willing to do what he's got to do, and he is a man who loves his car dearly. Like, he is hilarious. I absolutely love Van Arkride, and if I didn't have so many games with Reen, he'd probably be my favorite protagonist in the whole series, but I'm going to let him cook a little bit longer because I'm wondering with Daybreak 2 how things are looking for him. Anyway, given his position in this world, Agnes Claudel reaches out to Van and says, hey, I'm looking for this particular orbment. And so she, as a student of Aramis Academy, hires him. And so now they're out looking for these orbments. And from there, I'm going to let you discover the rest. But the setup is really good. They introduce you to some early gameplay elements. And what I'll say about this is, as someone who's been very critical of Trails pacing in the past, Daybreak is pedal to the metal. I mean, especially after chapter 3. That's the only chapter that I'll say dips a little bit. Like prologue 1, 2 are incredible. 3, I would say it's more of a flattening of the curve. It doesn't go down or anything. It's just more of a flattening of the curve. After that, the stuff they do in this game as a Trails fan is unbelievable. Like, they go to serious heights, which leads me to a verdict of best Trails game yet. This is my favorite one. And for those who are wondering what my favorite was before this, it's one we've also talked about here on the channel, Trails from Zero. And for those of you, I'll just say this now, who like Trails from Zero, who love some things that happened in that game, I'll just say that you are going to be aptly rewarded here for your time spent with that game. And that's the beauty of Trails. But as someone who loved, I'll just say, particular elements of Zero a lot and felt they kind of got left behind, someone at Falcom's listening because they picked up all those threads. This is the most Maddie Trails game. And I am more excited than ever for the future of this franchise. So yes, if you couldn't already tell, I'm telling you to go buy Trails Through Daybreak. I think even if you're a newcomer, my goal is to get a ton of people into this series. I feel so passionate about it, and I feel because of the series scope, so many people are like, I don't know, but look, many of y'all are playing these live service games, flushing hours down the toilet. I'm sure you feel really seen right now. Enough of that. Go play a full story series that goes for about 200 to 300 hours, depending on how quickly you go through it all, and come back to me and tell me which was more fulfilling for your time spent. Yes, it's a tall order, but when you play a game like Trails Through Daybreak, you're gonna want to know more about these characters and what's happening later, but also what led to these moments. Why are they so important? It's a series about return on investment, and you're doing yourself a disservice if you love JRPGs and you haven't tried out Trails. It's slow going at times. It's a series of highs and lows at times, but mostly, and this is no exaggeration as someone who finds themselves pretty critical of their favorite things, is mostly highs. Trails does have those dips like Sky FC, I think especially Cold Steel 4. It has its dips, but for the most part, this is an incredible series, and you're not doing yourself any favors by continuing to miss out. So try out Trails Through Daybreak. It's a trust me bro kind of purchase, and I think you'll really like it, because even if you don't know what's going on in the story at times, it is such a fun game to play. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is my review of Trails Through Daybreak. Are you picking it up? Let me know down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.